Good afternoon, everyone. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new interesting videos. So, yeah. I never thought I'd be that guy writing one of these posts, but here I am. Burned, humiliated, and still trying to figure out what the hell actually happened. I, 28M, got dumped by my boyfriend, 31M, in a restaurant loudly, publicly, and just after he called me ugly in front of his friends. We were together for almost 2 years. Met at a bar during a friend's birthday party. He was charming, confident, the kind of guy who can walk into any room and make it feel like the temperature just went up 10 degrees. I won't lie, when we started dating, I felt lucky. I genuinely believed I had pulled someone way out of my league. Things were good, until they weren't. And now, looking back, I can see the warning signs I missed. Or maybe ignored. The first red flag? He didn't introduce me to his friends for the first 6 months. When I brought it up, he said he just liked keeping things private. I bought it. Figured maybe he'd had bad experiences before, or that he was just protective. But honestly? That was me making excuses. Because when I finally did meet them, something felt off. They were polite, sure. But cold. Like I was this accessory he brought along to show off, and not someone who mattered. One of them, Matt, kept calling me kid even though we're only 3 years apart. And my boyfriend never corrected him. Just laughed like it was funny. I don't know why I stayed so long. Scratch that, I do know. Because when it was just the two of us, he could be incredible. Thoughtful. Generous. He'd cook for me after work. Rub my shoulders when I had migraines. He once drove an hour at 11 p.m. because I had a panic attack and didn't want to sleep alone. And when someone can do that, it makes it so much harder to leave when they start chipping away at you in quieter ways. Anyway, I'll get into the restaurant scene in the next part. But I wanted to set the stage, because things like this don't usually come out of nowhere. They build. Quietly. Until one day, it all erupts and you're left sitting there in the middle of it, wondering how the hell your life just cracked open like that. I didn't even want to go out that night. It was a Friday. I just wrapped up a brutal week at work, my boss had chewed me out over a client file I didn't even touch, and I was running on caffeine and pure willpower. All I wanted was to go home, throw on sweats, and order takeout. But my boyfriend, let's call him Jason, had other plans. He told me we were going out with his friends, Matt, Jamie, and someone new he wanted me to meet. It'll be fun, he said. Wear something nice. I almost said no. I wish I had. But when you're in a relationship where the other person holds all the social cards, it's easy to feel like you're always playing catch up. Like if you skip one night, you'll fall behind somehow. Miss your chance to fit in. So I got dressed. I stood in front of the mirror for way too long, debating if the shirt I picked made my arms look small. I remember changing 3 times. I even fixed my hair twice. For him. For the impression I thought I had to make. We got to this trendy little restaurant downtown. You know the type, low lighting, minimalist decor, staff that seems annoyed you're even there. Jason was already in performance mode before we sat down. Big laugh, firm handshake, a clap on the back like he was auditioning for the role of cool boyfriend. And I was background noise. I knew it the second his friends looked past me like I was just the guy who drove him there. Then came the wine. The conversation turned into inside jokes, old college stories I wasn't part of, and low-key jabs that made me feel like a tag-along. I tried to smile, tried to contribute, but every time I opened my mouth, I felt like I was stepping on someone else's stage. Until Jason made that comment. But I'll get into that next. So we're mid-dinner, right? I'm pushing roasted beets around on my plate because I didn't really have an appetite, too much tension in my chest, and honestly, the whole thing felt like I was on a first date with people who already hated me. Then Jamie, the only one at the table who ever really acknowledges me, says something about couples posting too many selfies. Jason laughs and goes, God, right? Especially when one person's, like, obviously the hotter one. Everyone chuckles. And I try to smile because, sure, it's a joke. But then Matt goes, "Yeah, like you too. I mean, no offense, man," and he looks at me, "but you kinda won the jackpot, Jason." I'm sitting right there. Jason doesn't say anything for a second. Then, with this smug-ass grin, he shrugs and goes, "Yeah, I mean, looks aren't everything." That's when I felt it. The blood drained from my face. My throat tightened. I tried to laugh it off. Tried. But the way they all laughed after that, like it was just this obvious, harmless observation? That was the moment. Right there. The moment I stopped feeling like his boyfriend and started feeling like a burden he carried around to feel better about himself. It didn't stop there, either. Matt raised his glass and said, "To St. Jason, dating ugly guys with good personalities." And Jason? Jason raised his glass too. That part still stings the most. I didn't even have words. I just sat there, nodding, like my brain had shut down all its defense systems. And inside? I felt myself fracture. A clean snap. No yelling, no tears, just this dull, nauseating silence in my gut. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, but I didn't even make it there. I stood by the door to the bar area, trying to breathe, trying not to cry, and definitely trying not to throw up. I thought that was the low point. It wasn't. That came next. When I came back to the table, they had already ordered dessert. Not for me, just for them. Jason was laughing about something Jamie said, and when he saw me, he didn't even ask if I was okay. Just looked up and went, "You good," like I'd gone out for a smoke break and not to emotionally reboot in the hallway. I sat down. Quiet. Shrinking. Then, out of nowhere, no lead up, no warning, Jason says, "We should talk." Right there. Mid-laugh. Mid-bite. In front of his friends. And I remember freezing, fork halfway to my mouth, heart already dropping. "Okay?" I said, careful. Small. Then he just did it. Right there at the damn table. Said, "I've been thinking about this for a while. And I don't think this is working anymore. You're a great guy, but I don't feel like we're compatible long-term." Just like that. Like he was canceling a gym membership. Matt and Jamie went quiet. You'd think someone died. Except they didn't seem shocked. More like awkward. Like they knew it was coming. Like maybe he'd talked to them about it beforehand. I couldn't even speak. My brain locked up. My stomach turned. I felt like a side character in my own life, watching someone else take control of the script. I remember stammering, "You're doing this now? Here?" And he shrugged. Shrugged. Like it wasn't a big deal. Said, "I just didn't want to keep pretending in front of everyone." As if I was the one pretending. As if he hadn't just joked about my appearance like I wasn't sitting right there. I didn't even cry. Not then. I just sat there, stunned, while they awkwardly moved on to espresso shots and creme brulee. It felt like a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. I left before the check came. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't yell. I didn't even look back. I just walked out, alone, into the cold night, and I swear to God, that was the moment something in me broke wide open. I didn't call a cab. Didn't text a friend. I just walked. It was cold out, late March, the kind of evening where winter's still clawing at your bones. I didn't have gloves, just a thin jacket, and every gust of wind felt like a slap. But I needed to feel it. I needed something that made sense physically, because nothing in my head did. I kept replaying it, over and over, the laugh, the toast, the dump. My mind was stuck in this vicious loop where every second I stayed in that chair echoed louder than the last. Why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I stand up for myself? Why didn't I smash a damn glass or throw water in his face like they do in movies? Because I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. And even worse, I believed it. In that moment, I actually believed that I wasn't good enough. That maybe I was the ugly one. That maybe I was just the soft-hearted, too easy, safe option Jason kept around until someone better came along. I stopped walking at one point and looked in a storefront window. My reflection looked hollow. Like someone who'd just crawled out of a crater. I didn't go home right away. I wandered through side streets and alleys I didn't even recognize. At some point I sat on a bench outside a closed cafe and just stared at the sidewalk, trying not to cry where strangers could see me. That's when I realized I didn't really have anyone to call. Jason had slowly become the center of my life over the last 2 years. And somewhere along the line, I let my other connections fade. Not on purpose. It just happened. We shared so many mutual friends, and I didn't know who would pick sides. Or if anyone would believe me. Or care. I was alone. And it was louder than anything anyone at that table had said. When I finally made it to my apartment, my legs were numb and my throat was sore, probably from clenching my jaw the entire way. I didn't even turn on the lights. I just stood inside the doorway for a minute, staring into the dark. My phone buzzed. For a second, I thought it was Jason. Maybe he realized he went too far. Maybe it was an apology. Maybe, God forbid, it was him asking if I got home safe. Nope. It was a text from Jamie. Sorry about tonight. Hope you're okay. I stared at it for a long time. No punctuation. No offer to talk. Just that limp little sentence that made me feel even smaller. I went to open Jason's messages, and they were gone. I checked his profile, blocked. No warning. No conversation. Just gone like I never existed. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. It hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't even worth a conversation after 2 years? Just a messy dinner dump and a silent exit? Blocking me like I was some unhinged ex who might come screaming through his DMs? I sat down on the floor and finally let myself break. Not the dramatic kind of breakdown. The quiet kind. The kind where your body just folds in on itself and your chest hurts and you cry so hard you stop making sound. Just tears and silence and that awful, crushing feeling like your heart is collapsing inward. I cried for hours. No shame. Then, around 3 a.m., I opened Instagram and saw that Jason had already updated his story. A photo of a drink. A boomerang of him and Matt smiling at a bar. The caption? Good vibes, only nail polish sparkles. Like none of it even happened. Like I was never real. And I wish I could say that's when I got angry. That I stood up and said, screw this guy, I deserve better. But no. That night, I still missed him. I still wanted him to come back. The next few days were brutal. I didn't go to work. I called out sick and told my boss I had the flu. Which, technically, wasn't a lie. Heartbreak does feel like a virus. It eats you up from the inside, leaves you weak, unable to stand for long, too sensitive to noise or light. I wasn't myself. I was some pale, sunken version of who I'd been just a week earlier. I didn't shower. Didn't cook. I think I lived on crackers and ginger ale for 3 days. My phone stayed on silent, flipped screen down on the nightstand. I kept thinking, was it me? Was I that blind? It's wild how many little moments come flooding back when your brain's stuck in grief mode. Things you ignored at the time because love makes excuses for disrespect. Like how Jason always made me walk on the street side of the sidewalk. Not to protect me, he said he didn't want cars to splash him. Or how he never posted photos of us together. Said he didn't want to make things performative. But he posted brunch every Sunday like it was a damn religion. Or how he'd introduced me to people as his friend more than once and brushed it off as a joke. It's like I was remembering the relationship in reverse. And instead of love, all I could see now was how much of myself I had edited down just to keep him comfortable. At one point, I opened my laptop to try to distract myself, Netflix, maybe, or some mindless show. But the last tab I'd left open was our shared Google Calendar. We had plans for a trip to Portland in 2 weeks. Non-refundable. I stared at that calendar like it was mocking me. My name was still on it. His wasn't. Somewhere around day 5, I got tired of feeling like a ghost in my own apartment. I hadn't told anyone the full story yet. Just vague texts to 2 people I trusted. Jason and I broke up. It was bad. I'll explain later. They sent hearts and "I'm here if you need" messages. I appreciated it, but I didn't answer. I didn't want to talk. Not yet. Instead, I started cleaning. I don't know why, something in me snapped. I stripped the bed. I gathered every shirt Jason had left here, which was, insultingly, a lot. That man left more clothes in my closet than I think I ever saw him wear. I stuffed everything in a grocery bag, tied it shut, and left it by the door. Not even sure why. It wasn't like he'd come get it. Not like I'd mail it. But something about physically removing his presence made me feel like I had control again. Then I cleaned the kitchen. Like, actually cleaned it. With vinegar and gloves. I scrubbed until my arms hurt. Grief doesn't leave you all at once. It's not like someone flips a light switch and you're fine. But sometimes, you find a dimmer. And that night, the house was a little less dark. I lit a candle. I took a hot shower. I put on clean clothes. No one saw it but me, and maybe that's what mattered. For the first time in days, I stood in front of the mirror, looked at myself, and said out loud, "You didn't deserve that." And I believed it. Not fully. But enough to whisper it again. By the second week, the silence stopped feeling like punishment. There's this weird in-between space after a breakup, especially one that ends with public humiliation, where everything's too quiet, but that quiet eventually turns into something almost useful. Like white noise. Background stillness where you can finally hear yourself think again. I started journaling. Nothing poetic, just raw, ugly thoughts. Stuff like, why did I laugh when he called me ugly? Why was I afraid to walk out? Would I still be with him if he hadn't embarrassed me first? That last one stuck in my throat. Because if I'm being honest, I think the answer was yes. I would have stayed. And that scared me more than anything. I also reconnected with people. Sent longer replies to the texts I'd ignored. One of my coworkers, Jules, invited me out for drinks after our shift. Just the 2 of us. No loud group, no forced move-on energy, just someone who listened while I finally told the whole story. She didn't say "you'll find someone better." She just said, "That was cruel. I'm really sorry that happened to you." It meant more than she knew. After that, I started sleeping better. Eating better. Hell, I even started showing up to work early. Not to impress anyone, but because it gave me a reason to move. To be seen. To remind myself I still existed outside of that relationship. Jason didn't reach out. He didn't apologize. And I stopped waiting for it. At some point, maybe around week 3, I looked at a photo of us and didn't feel like crying. I didn't feel much of anything, really. And that, in itself, was huge. Because for so long, Jason had taken up so much space in my head, what he liked, what he hated, what jokes made him laugh. I used to tailor whole parts of myself just to keep him happy. I'd stopped singing around the apartment because he said my voice was a little pitchy. Stopped wearing my favorite floral shirts because he thought they were doing the most. Even stopped ordering dessert when we went out, because he always joked I had the appetite of a 12-year-old girl. That one stung more now than it did then. It hit me that I had been giving him the best, softest parts of me, and he hadn't protected them. He'd laughed at them. Publicly. So I started taking those parts back. I made a playlist full of the songs I used to hum while cooking and played them loud. I wore one of my floral shirts to brunch and got a compliment from the waiter. I even ordered a slice of red velvet cake for no reason one afternoon and ate it slowly, without guilt. And when I caught my reflection in the cafe window, I didn't flinch. I looked like someone real. Not a reflection of who he wanted me to be. Just me. A few weeks after everything went down, I started getting invites again. Friends reached out. Jules texted about a karaoke night. I was hesitant at first. I still didn't feel like myself. But I said yes. I needed to remind myself I wasn't just the guy who got dumped. I was still me, even if I had to learn how to be him again. The night was weird at first. A little awkward. But then, Jules dragged me to the stage for some ridiculous duet. I'd had a couple of drinks, but that didn't matter. What mattered was how I felt the second I stepped in front of everyone. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't thinking about the way I looked or sounded or if I could still perform the way Jason thought I should. I just laughed. Out loud. Like a real, guttural laugh. The kind you have when you don't care who's watching because it's your moment. The crowd cheered. I didn't even care. The cheering felt nice, but it was for me, not because I was trying to get someone's approval. That laugh, the first real one in weeks, was a turning point. I remembered what it felt like to be free. To not be weighed down by someone else's idea of who I should be. It didn't fix everything. But for the first time since that night at the restaurant, I felt like I could breathe again. One morning, about a month after the breakup, I sat down at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop. I was halfway through reading an article on self-worth, something I'd never given much thought to before, when it clicked. I wasn't mad at Jason anymore. Sure, there were still moments where I got a flash of anger, like when I'd think about how he treated me, or the way he blocked me without a word. But, deep down, I wasn't angry. I was grateful. Grateful that he'd shown me who he really was. Grateful for the clarity that came with his cruelty. Because if he hadn't been so careless, I might have kept pretending. I might have spent another year, or more, trying to win his affection while neglecting myself. I wasn't the victim here. I wasn't the one who got dumped. I was the one who got free. And that made all the difference. It wasn't like an overnight epiphany, where everything clicked perfectly into place. But it was a moment. A realization. I wasn't angry at him. I wasn't angry at me. I was just done. Done with that chapter of my life. Done with waiting for a text, an apology, an explanation. Done with giving someone else the power to shape my happiness. The weeks that followed felt like a slow but steady transformation. It wasn't all rainbows and sunshine, and I still had my down days. But I learned something important: moving on isn't a linear process. It's messy, like peeling layers off an onion, one layer of hurt, then another, then some healing, and a little more pain. I found myself laughing at things again. Small things. Silly things. I started going out with friends more often, having deep conversations instead of the usual surface-level stuff. It was like I was rediscovering my personality, piece by piece. I even joined a yoga class. Not because I suddenly became all zen or enlightened, but because I wanted something for myself. Something I didn't have to justify or apologize for. And to my surprise, I really enjoyed it. I wasn't amazing at it, but I didn't care. I was there for me. What shocked me most was how easily I let go of the idea that I needed someone else to feel whole. I'd spent years believing that without a partner, I'd be incomplete. But now, I felt more like myself than I ever had when Jason and I were together. It wasn't that I didn't still want a relationship in the future. I wasn't bitter. I just knew I couldn't settle for something less than what I truly deserved. And I was done waiting for someone to give me that. Looking back, I realize how much I grew in that short time. Jason's words, as cruel as they were, broke something in me, something I hadn't even realized was fragile. But instead of leaving me shattered, I found pieces of myself I didn't know I had lost. The biggest lesson? It's simple: know your worth. I had let myself shrink in the shadow of someone else's expectations. I convinced myself I wasn't good enough unless I was performing for someone else, whether it was through physical appearance, humor, or just being someone I wasn't, to keep him happy. But when the dust settled, I realized that wasn't love. That was validation. True love, whether from a partner, friends, or even from yourself, should never feel like a test. It should feel like a soft place to land. If someone can't offer that, they don't deserve your time or your heart. The second lesson? Grief is not a failure. I used to think that if you moved on from someone, it meant you were weak or didn't love them enough. But moving on isn't a betrayal, it's self-preservation. It's saying, I am worthy of more than pain. And that doesn't make you a bad person. That makes you stronger. And lastly, I learned that time really does heal. Slowly, but surely. I'm not saying it happens overnight, but with each passing day, the weight of the hurt gets lighter. I'm not 100% healed. Maybe I never will be. But I'm okay with that. Because I'm better now than I was before. It's been a while since the breakup. I've dated a little since then, and while it hasn't been perfect, it's been better. I've learned what I need from a partner and what I'll never settle for again. I've learned how to communicate better, and more importantly, how to listen to my own feelings. I still think about Jason sometimes, not with anger or resentment, but with gratitude. I know it sounds strange, but if he hadn't been such a jerk, I might still be stuck in a toxic cycle of second-guessing myself. I might have spent years thinking I wasn't worthy of better. And I know I deserve better. To anyone reading this, especially if you've been through something similar, here's my advice. Don't wait for closure. Sometimes, the best closure is realizing that you don't need it. Don't let someone's cruelty define your self-worth. You are not the way they made you feel. Take your time. Don't rush through your pain. Process it. It's okay to cry, to be angry, to feel lost. But don't stay there forever. Trust that there's more ahead for you. This isn't the end of your story. It's just a chapter. And the rest? It's all still unwritten. Keep your head up, and know that you are worthy of a love that feels like peace, not a battle. And lastly, if you're ever doubting your worth, remember this. If a relationship makes you feel less than, it's not the right one. Don't be afraid to walk away. You'll thank yourself later.